Welcome to Language Surfers Podcast, a space with fresh waves for the mind, dedicated to create a platform where professionals from both language industry and academia can share their professional experiences, and where we also explore different career paths at different stages. Hi, Alper.
Hello.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and share your time with us today here. It's
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It means a lot. So, just before we go into the interview, I would like to briefly introduce you so that the audience knows who you are and what you're doing,
Hmm.
and then you will obviously provide us with more details.
Sure.
So, Dr. Alper Kumcu is a language researcher at the Department of Translation and Interpreting at Hacettepe University in Turkey. He started a master degree at the same university in 2011 on eye movements in simultaneous interpreting with text, and this was one of the first studies on interpreting using the eye movement paradigm. He also started his PhD in linguistics at the same university, but then he moved to UK to pursue a degree in psychology at the University of Birmingham. He obtained also a master in science degree with distinction from the School of Psychology from the same university. He completed his PhD in 2019 under the supervision of Dr. Robin L. Thompson with a thesis entitled Looking for Language in Space Spatial Simulations in Memory for Language. Alper also received the Science Incentive Award in Social Sciences from Hacettepe University in 2020, and he now teaches mainly interpreting at Hacettepe University in Turkey and also works as a co editor of the Journal of Translation, Cognition and Behaviour from John Benjamin's. Okay, so Alper, I would really love to learn more from your experience. What was your motivation to study languages, and when and how did you decide to pursue a PhD?
Yeah. Okay. So my story with languages actually goes back to high school. So in Turkey, there are you have to choose a track at the second year of high school, and there is a physical sciences track, and there's a social sciences track, and also there's an equal-weighted one with social sciences and physical sciences, and then there is languages, right? So the thing is, I was really bad at maths, but on the other hand, I was really good at languages. So I usually hit the top 10 lists our teachers used to prepare according to our exam results. And then the decision was actually a no brainer. So I chose languages, of course. But the thing is, my school, my high school, actually we had really distinguished language teachers, English teachers back then. But my school was a slightly science oriented school, and the teachers and also the students, they I think they looked down on students who chose languages track. So we were like a bunch of like misfits who don't get maths, right? But I mean, the language people were always the most fun, and these people were interested in international series. They listened to cool music. So I never regretted my decision. Of course, back then I didn't know that this decision would shape my whole career and the position. Of course, I wouldn't be in such a position if I chose a different track in high school. But yeah, here I am. The only thing that has changed, I think, in high school, I was aspiring to be an author. So I was aspiring to study literature instead
Oh,
of translation and interpreting. And I wanted to be an author or a literary critic if I couldn't make it, and if I couldn't be a famous person. But because I was writing short stories back then, unfortunately, I stopped doing that. But then I studied translation, and of course, the my career path has changed again. And surprisingly, I was more interested. I began to get interested in the interpreting part rather than translation when I was in the third year of my undergraduate education. And then, yeah, gradually I discovered that the questions I had in mind were more or less related with the mental part of it, the cognitive part of it. So how people interpret, how this is even possible. I mean, interpreting from one language to another is quite miraculous when you think about it. especially under time limits and with so many things going on at the same time. So the project I had in mind, the questions I had in mind, I knew that all the answers lie in psychology. So that's how I decided to do a PhD in psychology. But yeah, this is the first part of the story.
Yeah, and was it difficult to enroll in a PhD program?
Yes. Again, the thing is, I actually when I finished the undergraduate program in Turkey, I started, as you said in the introduction, I started the MA program again in the same department on translation interpreting, and this is where I studied simultaneous interpreting with text, and I investigated interpreting with eye movements methodology. And then after I finished that program, I immediately, because that was a requirement of the position I was in, I immediately enrolled in a different PhD program in Turkey in linguistics.
Mhm.
And I was in that program, I studied linguistics for 2 years. And then I stopped, I left that program, and I enrolled a different program in the UK in psychology. Yes, it wasn't easy. First of all, it was a program abroad,
Mhm.
and the university that I applied is a prestigious one. So I'm sure that they receive so many applications from all over the world. So the competition was high, I guess. And then of course, I was interviewed with a few times with the person who would be my supervisor. Um, and also different people from the department, and also the paperwork was also quite stressful. And it is not enough to get applied to the program. You also need to find scholarship to
Yeah.
study there, because the price of education is quite high in the UK. So yeah, I had to deal with so many things at the same time, and I had the limited time at that in that year. So yeah, I couldn't say that it was easy.
Yeah, I can imagine because apart from the research part, the applications, if you need a funding, especially in a PhD
Mhm.
program, they have a specific timeline and there are specific requirements which you need to make sure that you really meet the
Mhm.
criteria, right?
Mhm.
It's
Exactly.
a lot of time and energy spent on preparing an application.
Yeah, I was funded by the Turkish Higher Education Board.
Okay.
At that time, there was a special scholarship program for academics who
Okay.
would like to study abroad, and it required a really high GPA, as far as I can remember. Didn't I didn't get another interview for the scholarship program, but I made an official application with all my documents and like my transcript and the other official records, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, so now if you allow me, I'll just share the fact that we both met at the Cetro Summer School of
Hmm.
Translation Studies at the Catholic University in Leuven in Belgium. And I remember that when we had to present the research investigations we were working on, where when I heard your presentation, I was really, uh, impressed by your research regarding the eye movement at that time. So, just could you please explain a bit more?
Sure.
How did you perform this research? What is the eye tracking method, and
Sure.
what was the results that you got?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course, I would love to. So again, I'm going to tell a story about it. Now that we are talking a bit about the background of the things that we do. So actually, I knew a little bit of eye tracking when I was doing masters
Mhm.
here at Hacettepe University, but I had no formal education whatsoever in psychology or in eye tracking. But then one day, one of our professors at the department told me that her one of her students was doing an eye tracking experiment in another university. Actually, she was the one who would be a participant for that study, but she couldn't make it, and she asked me to be a participant for that study instead of her. And I said yes, I accepted that. But before that, I had never ever seen an eye tracking device. So I
Yeah.
just saw the pictures of it. And then I went to that lab and I saw the device. And she was doing a study. Now I knew that she was doing a study on the translation and
Mhm.
how people, how eyes move when they translate different texts and different types of text. But then when I participated in the experiment, immediately I thought that uh, is could this be something that I could use in interpreting? And after that, I thought about it day and night, because I was also fascinated by the device itself and also by the methodology, because I thought that it could give the answers to the questions that I have, you know. And then the thing is, of course, the it is very difficult to do it in interpreting, and it is not the first device that comes to your mind when you study interpreting, because interpreting is basically an auditory thing, right? So you listen to speeches and you interpret them. So there is people think that there's nothing visual, but in my thesis back then I wrote it in 2011, and now the things have changed a lot, and I can say it's it changed even more in the direction that I expected at that time. So I argued that interpreting the main channel, yes, it is auditory, but the information comes also from the visual channel. So the interpreters are also dealing with the visual material. You can for example read PowerPoint slides, or you can view the speaker himself or herself on the stage, or you can see the audience, or there are so many visual information coming to you as an interpreter, right? So in a sense, in interpreting, people, individuals need to combine the information coming from the audio channel, coming to your ears, and coming to your eyes from both channels. So
Mhm.
the main question was, of course, how people combine them, especially under different working conditions. For example, imagine that as an interpreter, you were given a PowerPoint slide, and the speaker says that, yeah, I'm going to stick to the slides, and I will just read the slides, so you don't have to worry about it. And then on the stage he decides to divert from the slides, and he tells jokes and he tells anecdotes. All the interpreters have such experiences. So my specific question as to this dissertation: how eye movements follow the PowerPoint slides or any visual material that you can name of, you can think of, like it could be a transcript of the speech. How people keep a track of the visual material when a different kind of auditory information comes to your ear. So
Mhm.
how can you combine these two? Because you are at the same time you need to deal with the interpreting part. So that was the main question actually. And for that I used interpreting, and of course I observed that the eye movements really try to get a grip of the text when a different source of speech comes to your ear in such a case. So uh, without eye movement, yes, you can learn from the experiences, subjective experiences of interpreters, or you can do other types of methodologies. But with eye tracking it is very easy, and it's very consistent to observe this, and it is an objective way of measuring things, right? So sometimes, because people think that I didn't do that, or I'm sure that I followed the PowerPoint presentations, but the eye movements tell a different story. And they're objective, so we always say that eyes never lie. So here's that.
Yeah, I really love that. Such a nice uh, connection between what you say regarding interpreting cognition and psychology.
Mhm.
And especially what I really like is the fact that when you enrolled in your PhD program, you were immediately aware of the fact that you would need more background from the psychology. So I suppose that that was also like a turning moment for you in your career, right? Because you decided to take this psychology
Mhm.
education and get that information so that you can really have a more holistic approach in your PhD research.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it was difficult because, before starting the PhD program in psychology, I had no formal background
Hmm.
in psychology, just a couple of introductory classes when I was in the undergraduate years. And that's why I didn't start the PhD program straight away. They asked me to do a second master in
Yeah.
science, in psychology, as a preparation for the PhD program. So I wrote another dissertation for a year because it takes a year in the UK to do a master's. And then, we used to have those roundtable meetings with my research group. We used to have a research group focusing on language and psychology. And then the people on those at those meetings, roundtable meetings, they share their progress in their dissertations or research projects, or sometimes the professors share their research, they share their final results, so on and so forth. And then at first, it was very difficult for me to understand what they were talking about, let alone asking any questions. And I felt really intimidated because, it was kind of a whole different language to me, the language of psychology. So I spent a lot of time to catch up with them. I stayed up late at library for many nights and read a lot about psychology. And of course, I used to have courses during the masters. But other than that, I read so many papers. And but as the time progresses, as I attend many roundtable meetings, I gradually get accustomed to the language that I mentioned of.
Yeah. And was it difficult for you to find volunteers, interpreters who would contribute or, support you in your investigation?
You mean in my master's, or I actually never studied on the professional interpreters. I
Okay.
never, yeah, worked with them. But in my master's, I my participation, my part, the participants of the study were the undergraduate students
Okay.
at that
Mm-hmm.
time. And then during my PhD, I investigated the relationship between space and language. So,
Okay.
I investigated the verbal memory and how space contributes to how space contributes to the memory for language. But
Mm-hmm.
then again, my participants at that time were the undergraduates at the Department of Psychology, University of Birmingham.
Yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
And how do you um, publish the result? I mean, how you disseminate the results of your research? Do you normally go to international conferences? Is it
Mhm.
through international publications?
Both of them. I really love international conferences, especially after the COVID periods. Unfortunately, people still sometimes choose to do organize online conferences. But
Mhm.
I think being physically in international conferences and talking to each other is great for disseminating the science and your latest results. It is very quick, and you get instant feedback from the people, and you always get back home with so many different ideas, also so many different questions. That's why I really like international conferences. But other than that, of course, I was very lucky to publish all the results in my PhD thesis. So basically, in psychology, in the field of psychology, the PhD thesis is a collection of different individual experiments. So in my case, I had four different experiments, and yeah, we get to publish all of them. Um, but of course, one of them was published before I finished my PhD, but the other ones were published after my graduation. and after one of them was rejected at first from a journal, and then I added new data. I tested more participants to support the results according to the comments of the reviewers. And then, yeah, all of them were published now. And I can say that this is quite important because, yeah, for example, a PhD thesis, regardless of being a master's or a PhD, I mean, the thesis is, as a format, is quite long, as you know,
Yeah.
and it is not really accessible, especially for people who need to deal with so many material at the same time. And nobody has really time to read a dissertation from the very beginning to the end. So a summary in a paper is quite a good way to disseminate the results, apart from the international conferences that I mentioned of. So yeah, I think this is the mainstream method for, yeah, sharing your results with the world.
Yeah, that's great. And I really like the idea that you mentioned. You also got rejected, right? Because we don't know behind the scenes, to say so, right? So we are experts in our research, and then we spend a lot of energy and time to publish, to
Mhm,
write the articles, and then we submit it to different journals.
mhm,
And it really happens that we don't get the to be accepted from the first time. Sometimes there are peer reviewed journals, right? You have to amend, to make
mhm.
edits based on the feedback we get. So from your experience, how do you handle these type of moments when, for example, when your article was rejected? Obviously it's a turning moment because it's
Yeah,
your research. You've been emotionally involved, and it's like, oh, I
yeah,
want to give this to a broader audience. How do you handle these type of
yeah.
moments in your life?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. In that it was a turning moment, and yeah, they happen. These moments happen to everyone. So rejection is a part of the process,
Mm.
because no matter how involved you are emotionally, cognitively, or how long, it doesn't matter how long you worked on it. You might get rejected from a journal at any point in your career, I guess. And I'm at the very beginning, so it's quite normal for me. For that paper, I mean, I think the quality of the comments coming from the reviewers is quite important in that case. And I was again so lucky because when I read of course, it was the middle of the night, so I think I received the email like 2 a.m. in Turkey, and then I'm a very light sleeper, by the way. So I heard the sound of my cell phone, and then I just checked my emails and saw the rejection email. Of course, I was really disappointed,
Mm.
and I couldn't say that I was devastated, but I was disappointed because I wasn't, I think, expected. I wasn't expecting it. And then in the morning, with a fresh mind, I began to read the comments from the reviewers. And then as I read, I realized that, yeah, they were right. I mean,
Mm.
yeah, they were right. So there were some holes, there were some things to support, there were some things to fill in this research. No matter how confident you are, there are always I mean, things that you can improve in the paper. So if you, I think, address the comments from the reviewer as a feedback to improve the quality of your paper, I think it is a good approach in the right direction, right? And then we did what the reviewers said. I mean, as I said, we completely agree with me and my supervisor. We completely agreed with the supervisors, sorry, reviewers. And then we did the required revisions, and we
Mhm.
sent it to another journal, and then yeah, it got accepted.
Yeah, I really like that because indeed it's the mindset with which you approach every happening in your life, right? So that those comments came as feedback and really supported you to have the article prepared, and then have the acceptance of another journal. So the idea is
Exactly.
not to stop there and just, oh, I got rejected. Just
No, no,
continue to improve, right?
yeah, definitely. I think we shouldn't take criticism and or rejections personally. It is not a personal attack to ourselves, right? It is just a comment on the things we do. I mean, it's not something. something constant. So we,
Hmm.
anyone, I mean, how it doesn't matter how specialized that person is. Anyone can produce a high quality research or a
Hmm.
mediocre quality research at any point in her or his career. So these feedbacks and comments and reviewers are always about the output itself, not about the researcher himself or herself.
Yeah, exactly. And considering the fact that you are also a co-editor at the Journal of Translation, Cognition and Behavior from John Benjamin's, could you share a bit from your experience in this role? How is it to be an editor at an international journal?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, for this journal, I can say that I'm a fresh editor, so I've just started, and then I can say that it is a really prestigious role, but with a heavy workload. And before that journal, I was an associate editor for an international journal that is still being published within Turkey
Mm-hmm.
from our university. But I think the best part is that you expand your network uh, in the fields. And the other thing that I like is you are always up to date
Yeah.
as to the research in your field, right? So because you are supposed to read those papers and you know what people are studying, what is the latest trends in your field. So this is the best part. This is the part I like. But I think people sometimes think that, I mean, when people regard about the role of editorship or other these kind of roles, I think it is more about the communication than, of course, there's, I mean, of course, there is a scientific merit that you need to have and you need to take into consideration when dealing with the papers. But also I think the essential thing is communication when you are in such roles, because you have to be kind but assertive at the same times, because there are some rules that you need to follow in terms of time, in terms of the format of the journal, and in terms of other rules coming from the publishing house. At the same time, you need to there's a standard that you need to preserve and
Mm-hmm.
maintain, but at the same time you need to establish a good communication with the authors, with the reviewers, with the people from the publishing house. So you are at the very center of this communicative network, right? So I think it is because you are always sending emails back and forth in this roles, so you have to be really disciplined and tactful at the same time. So yeah, these things, people usually disregard such things in academia, in such roles. They always think that it's all about science and research methods, so on and so forth. But yeah, I would like to underline the importance of communication skills.
Yeah, that's so great, and congratulations on this new role. I think
Thank you.
it's really important to, as you well say, to expand the network, and even more important, I would say, just as you mentioned, to stay in contact with the latest trends, right?
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
It's an easy way. The information comes to you.
The information comes to you, and you can see, I mean, you can see the gap in the literature.
Okay.
So I mean, you can see that I wish more people would study that or this. And sometimes you see that there is a growing interest in some specific subfields in cognitive translation.
Hmm.
So yeah, but these are like fashion trends, they come and go.
Yeah. And apart from this role, you also mentioned that you are teaching interpreting at the
Mhm.
Hacettepe University.
Yes.
So, how is your? Can you explain us or just support us understand how does a week in your professional life look like? Because you've got so many roles, right? So,
Right, right. I mean, yeah, as I was thinking about the questions that you have that we have discussed before, I mean, I think again I'm going to repeat what I said about communication, and this time
mm,
time management is the key here. So as you said, I need to address different things at the same time. I mean, I have different roles in my professional life. So So for example, especially this semester I have many courses. I have a teaching load. I have many courses to teach. And then during the day, I am also at the department. I'm also the division coordinator for the Erasmus program, and I also a distance education coordinator. So I have some meetings with my research students and also with the undergrads about these roles. So time management, as I said, is the most important part of the job. I think you have to divide, you have to define your priorities, and you have to divide your responsibilities. And I mean, everybody has a different style. For me, I mean, I wake up really early in the morning. I'm not a night person. I Unlike many people in academia, I don't like staying up late and working late. I try to wake up early in the morning, and I mean immediately start working in the morning. Then I go to bed really early. So yeah, I can say that. And we also have a lot of projects going on at the same time, so you have to change context every time. So because I mean changing from switching from one role to the other, it is cognitively demanding. It is really exhausting actually, because you have to remember what you have been doing, and what are the requirements of the specific job you are dealing with. So
Mhm.
every time you have to, there's a huge memory load in changing contexts every time. So as I said, I benefit from some time management and project management tools like everybody uses nowadays, like Notion. And I think in academia, as I said, in short, it doesn't matter how smart you are. I think persistency can
Hmm.
be another important skill or merits that you can have. And because when I look around, I see that the most successful people in academia are the ones who persistently work towards a goal, rather than who just show some sparks of intelligence from time to time. So you have to be really consistent towards the end. And and I think maybe we can talk it when we are comparing the industry and academia. But
Hmm.
in academia, everything takes very long, and you have to be really patient, I guess. So people sometimes expect instant gratification from the things they do. So when you are working on a paper, it takes really long to get an satisfaction or the pleasure of success you get from the paper. It takes really long to get that. So I think you need to celebrate every little moment in such long projects. This is what I try to do at least.
Yeah, I really like this tip that you are giving because I think it's, as you all mentioned, it's really important. You have a long-term perspective with your research, but then you have to keep the motivation in short bites.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the relationship between industry and academia, uh, could you also let us know whether you have any collaborations with companies from the industry,
Mm-hmm.
or have you ever considered working in an industry rather than continuing your career in the academia?
Mm-hmm. Actually, I have worked in the industry
Okay.
before I started working at university. I had experience both as a translator and an interpreter for a limited period of time. But before my graduation, I started working in a translation company in Ankara, and they were specialized in translating technical documents, especially technical specifications. You know, those really technical documents filled with so many details. We were translating specifications about the train systems, especially the electrification part of them, and they were so long and so detailed. So as you can imagine, I was in front of a computer whole day. And but I can safely say that today I learned a lot from my experience in the industry. I mean I feel really lucky to have such industry related experience, because it contributed to me a lot as a researcher.
Mhm.
Um, for example, in the translation company that I mentioned, um, we used computer assisted translation tools, and my company at that time was one of the few companies, translation companies in Ankara, who which used these tools. So my experience with such tools came from my experience from working in that company. And apart from that, I also learned so many soft skills, like the communication skills I mentioned. Also working in industry helped me a lot in gaining such communication skills, especially communicating people coming from different backgrounds. Because in academia, you are in a kind of in an ivory tower, right? So you are in an isolated atmosphere. The people you are engaging, the people you are interacting on a daily basis, are more or less coming from similar backgrounds, or they are like they share same curiosities, same interests, more or less. I mean, of course, there are quite different people, but more or less. But in the industry, I mean, you get the chance to meet so many different people from so many different backgrounds, with different educational backgrounds or levels, or people approaching things quite different than you. So it is really enriching to work with these people and to communicate with these people. It really enlarges the horizons of your, I mean, your approach to not just work, but in life in general, right? So this is the thing that I get from the industry. And also I worked, as I said, as an interpreter with an interpreting company again in Ankara. I attended different events and organizations as a field and a conference interpreter. So I teach interpreting right now, and the experience that I got from that company again helped me a lot to, of course, I mean, compared to other people, I have very limited time in the industry, but still, now today, it allows me to share my experiences with my students and the things they might encounter in their professional lives when they graduate. So yeah, I feel really lucky to have such experiences.
Yeah, and definitely, as you all say, it provides you the other perspective, right? It's not like, oh, the industry is one thing and then I'm the academia. There's a totally different thing. But
No.
you combine both of them and you try to transfer the knowledge from the industry through your classes to your students.
Mhm. Especially in our field. So I think the line between industry and academia is quite thin in our field, right? Because in translation and interpreting, we are training people. Uh, I mean, to function, to work in the industry at first, because they are being graduated as translators, interpreters with a profession. So, and as for the research part, we this was not my own research project, but I was involved in a research project which was conducted with a factory in Ankara. So they were, I mean, it was a really quite a big project. They were. I think the project has ended. That's why I say they were developing some apps for the hearing impaired and deaf workers in the metal sector, working in such industries and factories. So I was involved in this project to test the eye movements of these workers when they were using these apps, and how they process the information coming from the manuals explaining the technical details of the things they work with. So we divided the information into two, like one is an accessible information with simplified language and maybe enlarged pictures, and the other one is the standard language, standard Turkish. And then we compared the comprehension levels, and also the eye movements, the language processing between the simplified material, the accessible material, and also the standard material. So yeah, it was an example of the research projects going on. But I know that in my field there are so many people who are closely working with the industry in research projects.
Yeah, that's so nice to hear, and I think even more important, right, to have this connection and collaboration between the industry and academia, and especially if there's a social impact, as you all said now, for the inclusion of these
Mhm.
deaf or persons with specific help in the factory that you were doing the project.
Yeah. I mean, the borders of our discipline, translation interpreting, is enlarging day by day. So when I was an undergrad, the not just the people outside our fields, of course, they have limited knowledge about what we are doing, but also the people who study translation interpreting. They, I think, they have a very limited understanding of what translation is, what interpreting is. But nowadays, in 2023, I think the borders have enlarged enormously. So, for example, accessibility, as I mentioned, is now included in the profession. And as you said, it has a huge social impact. It definitely, I mean, the research, um, in really physically, concretely, it helps people and it improves the quality of life of people who have special needs. And then you can also see the changes in the society that you can contribute with your research. So these are really important, I think, in our fields. Of course, I'm not saying that everybody should study or everybody should do research projects with a social impact. I mean, theoretical studies are quite important, and you cannot imagine practical studies without the theoretical ones. They feed each other.
Yeah.
But this is the I think the benefit of our fields. You can see the changes immediately in the society with the research that you do.
Yeah, that's great. And if you are to talk about your future plans, how do you envision your next years? What research projects do you have? What plans do you have?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Well, right now, actually, as I said, I'm involved in so many different projects going on, not just in translation interpreting, but I define myself as a language researcher, actually, given my background. And now I'm doing a research project with another university in Ankara about language processing and eye tracking again. We are looking at the relationship between the individual differences in memory and language processing with different syntactic structures. And in the future, actually, my dream is, of course, is to start a lab. Yes, so maybe in the future it might transform into a research center, but of course we need financial support to do such things, because in my field, in my specific field, we need devices, data collection devices, like, as I said, eye trackers or EEGs or even fMRIs, or nowadays people measure biodata like the skin conductance devices, galvanic skin sensors. So there are so many things that you can have in a lab. And then my, of course, dream is to start such a lab with undergrads, with PhD students and master students. And then I think this is how you do science in today's world. It is very difficult to keep up with the development, scientific developments, when you are alone. So you need to collaborate with people, especially international collaboration is quite important. And this is the part that I love most about academia. And then yeah, we really need to work together to attain important results with long lasting impacts.
Wow, I simply love your future plans. They look so interesting, and as you all say, collaborations across different universities and different groups of interest, audiences, and bring to the society, to the professionals, all those results. So I'm looking forward to have another interview in a couple of years with you
Thank you very
and
much.
get more insights on this.
Yeah, I wish to, I mean, again, be a guest of this podcast series when I have a lab such that, and I really love to tell about what we are doing in our lab in the future.
Yes, definitely. It's so interesting, and I'm really happy to see so big goals, because in the end it's a big goal, right, to achieve
Mhm.
something. But it's good that you are not just thinking of just continuing with your lectures, or do your some small research and just tick the boxes of requirements, but you have a much bigger goal.
No, definitely. I mean, this is not how I approach science. Actually, unfortunately, nowadays, people, especially in academia, and not just the people, the system itself, it
Hmm.
prioritize the quantity over quality, right? So as you said, you have to check some boxes to get promoted, but this is not really how I approach science. I mean, I'm not trying to be a professor as soon as possible, so I'm trying to produce quality scientific outputs with long lasting impacts. I mean, today to get published is not that difficult, considering that there are so many venues, um, so many journals, so many places that you can talk about your research or disseminate your research, publish your research. But I think the most important thing, especially considering the development, is artificial intelligence and other language models. So people now, the output, the scientific output, I'm sure will not just double, it will triple, it will quadruple in near future. But then I think in near future, the ones that will stand out from the this immense wave of research, the ones that will stand out will the ones who which discuss the results in a with a human touch, with some deep intellectual background, or with intellectual approach. So this is my overall objective. This is my approach to science. Actually, I'm trying to produce quality science, not just many papers, as much as quick as possible.
Yeah, that's really nice, and I'm really grateful to see, and give voice to such type of research, and really happy that I had the chance to, to know your research and now your future plans. I mean, it's just we're looking forward to see your results in a couple of more years.
Thank you very much.
And if we were to sum up the interview, what would be your main takeaways, some advice for the audience? Just some final thoughts for the audience from your
Sure,
perspective.
sure. My take home message would be that there is not a huge gap between industry and academia, especially in our field. And for people who would like to pursue a career in academia and to start a PhD program, I think there is no shortcut to success. There is no, not just in academy, but in life in general. There is no shortcut. I mean, it might sound as a cliche, but working hard is the only way to get there, right? I mean, and working not just hard, but working persistently, as I said, not getting bored easily, and doing the same things over and over again for a long period of time without getting bored. And also, that's why you need to, as I said, celebrate every little moments. You don't have to wait to get published to celebrate it. You can celebrate even the completion of one part in your project, or just writing a paragraph for that day. It doesn't matter, just go and celebrate. This is my approach, that because it takes so long, everything takes so long in research, in science. And I think, yeah, you nowadays the competition is quite high, as I said, because the number of papers, the number of research project is skyrocketing. So but you have to be really critical, and you have to, I think, also saying no to something is also important, because with so many things going on, you cannot devote to every project, you cannot get involved in every project. So you have to prioritize the things in your life. So you have to say no to some projects, and you have to say to the others. Yeah, these are the things that I can share, I guess.
Yeah, that's a very nice summary. And just one more question from my side, because you mentioned you spend a lot of time as a PhD researcher and a person with an intellectual curiosity reading and spending time in libraries.
Yeah.
Do you have some specific books that you consider that really changed your perspective of or supported you to have a shift in your mindset and, an impact? Because books are an important part in the life of any researcher.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I have always been an avid reader. I mean, you might be surprised, but the first author that I'm going to mention, or the first book that I'm going to mention, is not a nonfiction one about science or academia. Especially Jules Verne, the famous French author, had a huge influence on me as an author. He was my childhood idol, actually. I loved his books, and especially the Journey to the Center of the Earth shaped my dream of becoming a researcher, I guess. Of course, I'm not studying natural sciences or geography right now, but my parents used to be geography teachers. But I mean, the feeling of curiosity, this is also important. The feeling of curiosity, it is what fuels your this is I think this is the fuel of research, every research project. One shouldn't forget why we research at the very beginning. I mean, what is the point of all these? I mean, intellectual curiosity, I don't have any other answer. We are researching, we are investigating because we have some questions and we are looking for answers. So this is the main pillar of science, I guess. And Jules Verne taught me this, I think. And also, as nonfiction, I like reading the biographies of successful people. Again, not just in academia, but also in uh, life in general. I really like the biography of Steve Jobs from Walter Isaacson. And also, everybody, as a female scientist, everybody knows Marie Curie, but the biography of Dorothy Hatchkins, she is an inspirational researcher. I recommend everyone to read more about her. And also, the third, his book is actually is on my desk right now. This is a Turkish translation. He's my favorite director, David Lynch, and his book on finding new ideas called Catching the Big Fish. It was translated as big fish, just big fish into Turkish. I Because I really like the brainstorming and the idea generation phase of scientific projects, the very beginning, the first part. You know that you are just brainstorming, you come up with the craziest idea because you don't have any financial limits, you don't have any time limits. You can do any projects in your life. So this is the part that I like most. And then David Lynch, in his book, writes about what he does to find creative, good ideas. So yeah, these are the books or authors that I can mention of as sources of inspiration.
Yeah, that's so nice, and I'm sure that I will. I mean, I haven't read the last one that you mentioned, and the biographies. I think I also like to read biographies. They
Mhm.
are really inspiring, and as you all pointed out, it's very important to also read from different fields, right? And especially regarding the creativity. I mean, sometimes you get an idea from some by reading a book you would have never expected to
Yeah,
give you such an idea. So
certainly.
yeah, just like networking with talking to other people and see what are the interests of other people and how they achieve their goals. And together with the books, it's a great resource of inspiration.
Exactly, exactly. We shouldn't stay in our cells. We shouldn't stay in our like circles. We need to, because otherwise it just becomes an echo chamber. Like you just say something and you hear the same sounds from your peers. You need to get out of your like circles, your comfort zone, whatever you call it, and then communicate to each people or read different books.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice talking to you, and we found out a lot of interesting ideas and how to tackle the professional life, especially in the academia and the relationship between academia and industry. As mentioned, looking forward to hearing about your future plans about creating this lab. So thank you so much once again for your time and for sharing your experience. And we keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it was a pleasure. It was an honor to be a guest of this podcast. And as I said in the emails, I'm going to listen to every other episode because I'm also curious about what other people would say. So thank you very much for starting this podcast series and also having me as a guest.
Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Bye.
I invite you to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all other major platforms. Subscribe, but also share it with persons who might find it useful.